Welcome to The Memoir, where host Bobbie Goldie self-reflects on the chapters of her life. She's persevered through cancer, depression, addiction, adoption, poverty, and abuse. These are just a few obstacles she's battled through and is sharing her struggles and successes as a reminder we are not broken. We are just human. Now here's your host, Bobbie Goldie.
Recently, I had the privilege of chairing a women's leadership conference. There were hundreds of people in the audience, and as the day progressed, the feel in the room and the vibe was electric. The more individuals went up to speak and shared their personal journeys and their advice and wisdom, you could feel the energy just continued to increase. And so my responsibility throughout the day was to introduce the keynote speakers or the panelists. And then once they were done, I would go back up on stage and I would point out a few items that I thought were relevant. And at the end, just ensure that the flow was well and that everybody was getting what they needed from the day. So I'm sitting there listening to amazing speakers throughout the day. And then there was this one, I was just sitting there listening, to this amazing story of hers. And it started to connect with me. It was hitting me right in the heart. She was raw and candid, and she was sharing a very personal journey. And for some reason, something just came over me. So when this amazing speaker was done sharing her personal journey with me, I walked back up on stage and I sat there for a few seconds. Felt like a few minutes, actually. And I just stared out at the audience. And something came over me. And what I realized is that she was the sign. She was what I needed to get over this hurdle that I've been dealing with lately. She gave me the courage to actually go ahead and record my first podcast. It's amazing. This has been in the works for me for months and months and months. But every time I was getting ready to do this, I just couldn't pull the trigger. There were so many reasons why. It's scary. I've never done anything like this, and I'm sharing a lot of personal stuff. But I just want to thank her. She knows who she is. I thanked her that day. I thanked her a lot. I gave her a big hug. There were tears in my eyes, but she was the person. She was my sign. She was my angel that said, Bobbie, you can do this. So here I am today. And before I forget, I should introduce myself. I'm Bobbie Goldie, and I really want to thank you for listening today to my podcast, The Memoir. I truly appreciate your time. I know this world is so crazy. We're all so busy running 1,000,000 miles an hour. We're stretching ourselves thin. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to my little story. And hopefully you'll listen to more. Since I love telling stories, I guess it makes sense to tell you why I decided to share my story. Why did I think my story was so special? So as I'm sitting here drinking coffee, I can picture that exact moment when I knew it was my responsibility to share my life's journey, my memoir. So a little background before I get into the story. My company asked me several years ago to relocate to Canada for an opportunity, and it was an amazing opportunity. And then while I was living in Canada, back in about 2016, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm not going to get into the details now, but definitely a few other podcasts in the future, I'll share more of the details and really talk about my journey through breast cancer. So while I'm in Canada, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to speak for the Canadian Cancer Society. And I was very open with my entire story and journey through my breast cancer. And periodically, I had opportunities to speak. So at this specific event, it was the Canadian Cancer Society's breakfast. And there were hundreds of people in the audience. And it was pretty amazing. The room was so beautiful. It was this large ballroom with the tables were set very beautifully with beautiful flowers. So preparing, though, for this specific speaking engagement, usually I'll spend a good bit of time preparing to make sure I'm ready to go. But for this one, I didn't prepare very well, and the reason is because I was sick, because I was going through chemo, and I didn't have a lot of good days, and so the preparation for this was very limited. But fortunately for me, the day of this speaking engagement, I felt good. It was a good day. So I go up on stage, and there's these nice comfy little chairs that we all got to sit on, and the moderator was there, and it was just a really great morning. The moderator then started to go through introductions. So the first person that they introduced was an executive for the Canadian Cancer Society. She had a very impressive resume. And then the next speaker, it even got more impressive. This individual, he was a doctor for children's cancer. And he had amazing things that he did throughout his career, helping children get through cancer. And then as they were sharing their amazing bios, I started getting a really weird feeling in my stomach. Have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? Well, if you haven't, it's this thing where, say you get like a new job, or you're working on a new project, or you get a promotion, or you're doing something at for the first time at your kid's school, whatever it is. And as you're doing it, you're wondering why you're there. You're like, I'm an imposter. I can't handle this. This is too big for me. I don't have the skill set. I don't even know what I'm doing. And you start questioning everything of why you're there, of why you're doing this. And so as I'm on this stage, imposter syndrome starts rearing its evil head, and I start panicking. My heart starts racing. I'm looking out at this audience. My mouth starts getting dry, and I don't know what to do. Do I run off on stage? Because why do they have me on here? I'm just a chick with cancer. There's no reason for me to be up here. I don't have any special talents, and these gifts that were given, these people have given their lives to cancer, and I'm just, a cancer patient at the time. So what do? Do I run off on stage and say sorry, or do I tell everybody, I think somebody got something confused. This is the wrong panel. I shouldn't be on here. But you know what? That's not me. That's not Bobbie Goldie. That's not what I do. So I took a few moments, and it was silent, right? It was really uncomfortable. The other folks just introduced themselves, but I had to get it together. So I took a couple deep breaths, and I pulled up my big girl pants, and I introduced myself. And I said, hi, I'm Bobbie Goldie, and I have breast cancer. And as we were going through the panel questions, I answered my questions just like I needed to. And these individuals continued to talk about cancer and resources and healthcare in Canada and the resources that Canadian Cancer Society provides. And something hit me. And it just happened while I was up there. So we get to the end, and they ask each panelist, what is the one thing that you would want the audience to take away from today? And for me, they got to me, and what I realized is that there was a reason I was there. There was a reason I was chosen. It might have taken me a while to get to that, but I got there. So as I looked out to the audience, I said, you know what? My responsibility and the reason I'm up here is because I have a voice, and I'm willing to share my voice and my story. And so what I ask of you in the audience is, if you are that person that has a voice, that's willing to speak and is able to speak for yourself or for other people, you need to do it. You need to be the voice. So at that moment, when I look back at that day in that room with hundreds of people, what I realize is that was the moment in time where I knew that I should share my story, that I should share my voice. And I should do it in these podcasts. It's my responsibility as a good human being to raise my voice and share my stories. So, thus, here we are, me recording my first podcast. And let's be clear, I am more than just breast cancer. I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a sister. I am a friend. I am a cousin. I am an aunt. I am a leader. I am an employee. But also, I'm bruised. I'm battered. And I'm scarred from life. But you know what? I embrace every single battle wound that I have because it's made me a better human being. And it's made me understand that everybody is human. And more importantly, I love myself. I love the person I've become. Would I change this journey? Absolutely not. Not one part of it. Because every single time I've hit a point in life where I felt like I can't do this anymore. You know what? I'm tapping out. I give up. Why is this happening to me? Did you ever say that to yourself? I am a good human being. How many more good deeds do I need to go through in order for all this horribleness to stop? Well, you know what? Unfortunately, you have no control of that. But what you do have control of is how you respond to that situation and what you realize what you can learn from this situation. So, as we go through my journey through this podcast, I'm going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to be raw and I'm going to be vulnerable. And as I'm speaking of raw, I think maybe it's a good time for me to share with you another story about that recent women's leadership conference that I chaired. So I want to share the introduction that I provided. And through this, a couple things. I need you to be patient. And also, I'm not a reader. I typically love to just speak from my heart and take it in whatever direction it comes. But for this, unfortunately, it's pretty emotional for me. So I'm going to have to read my introduction, and I hope you don't mind. While I was preparing for today, I had the opportunity to self-reflect. So I want to share with you a bit of my personal story. The transition's going to be a little bit tough, so please bear with me. At 6 was the first time I can recall being molested. At 8 is the first time I remember my mother beating me up. At 12 was the first time she kicked me out of the house. And at 17, I had a gun to my head. 20 was the first murder in my family. And at 24, I was promoted to assistant vice president, which has led to a wonderful, amazing 25 plus years in my career. And I'm not sharing this story with you because I want sympathy or because I'm saying my story is any worse than yours. But as I've went through my career, I often get questioned. How did you turn out okay? Who was your female role model? How did you make it? What did you focus on? And you know what? I didn't realize until today, as I was starting to prepare for this conference, there wasn't one. There were many amazing women and many amazing men and fabulous moments that got me to where I am today. So as we have the opportunity to be inspired and expand our network today, my first ask of you is, as you're sitting here in the audience and you hear something that hits you right in the heart, I want you to write it down, and I want you to make sure that you put that little gift, that moment, that message into your personal gift box that you continue to have, that's helped you throughout your career and help you with throughout life. And then secondly, when someone asks you how you became so successful, or who was that role model that helped you become the person you are today, I hope that you can look back and you can say, some of these amazing humans in this room have helped you and continued to expand your voice. So yeah, that was a pretty intimidating moment for me. It's hard to share your deep, dark secrets like that on a public stage. This and many other topics are things that usually in this society, our mothers tell us or our family tells us. Those are things you do not talk about at the dinner table. Those are things you do not share with people. There's a stigma to them. And the sad part about all of those is these things, they actually need to be shared. We need to share them more because you know what? Life's not all a social media post that's all perfect with filters and everything that makes your life look so great to everybody else. That's not true. That's not what life is. So we need to share more. And you know what? Life is tough for us. It's tough. Every day, sometimes it's hard to get out of bed. But with a little faith, a little courage, we can persevere. And that's why I share that small little story with you, because it's a glimpse. It's a glimpse of my life and part of the reason I want to share my story. But wait, there's more. That's my infomercial voice, by the way. I use it quite a bit. Some of the other topics that I really want to talk about through this podcast, through my memoir, are cancer, depression, infertility, addiction, adoption, poverty, leadership, abuse, and that's just to name a few. So maybe you can see my hesitation in sharing my memoir. There's lots of history and lots of memories that I'm going to be pulling out of. And I know for a lot of people, including myself, there's things that we hide deep down and we try to forget about them because it helps us survive and get through life. But sometimes you got to pull those stories out for your own self-healing, but also to help other people. But you know what? Life creates our novels, and each of our novels is very unique, and no two are the same. My novel's filled with chapters created with my life-altering moments, and I have a lot of them. But there's something that's really interesting about all of these novels. We all have overlap, and we have commonalities. And because of that, there's things that are in my specific chapters, in some of my stories, that as I'm sharing them with you, my hopes is that you can get something out of them. Or you're sitting there and it's a tough day and you're wondering how you're going to get out of bed, you're wondering how you're going to get out of your car, whatever it may be. My hopes is that you hear one of my stories and it helps. It helps you feel like you're not alone, or it gives you the strength or courage to get out of bed or walk into the office, or you have a friend or a family member that is going through a difficult time. Maybe it's with cancer, or addiction or adoption. And you're able to say, hey, you know what? I'm here for you. Here's some things I'm going to do to help you, whatever it is. And of course, me being BLG, this podcast is my short-term goal. I always believe in having short-term goals and stretch goals. So this podcast is not the end game for me. It's just the next chapter. And I liken it to being the first chapter of my actual memoir. Yes, a real book. I can't even believe it. But honestly, for years and years and years, I've really wanted to write a book and share my stories. And podcasting and sharing the stories this way will help me create that actual book, that memoir. So I want to thank you today for coming along on my personal journey. I really appreciate it. And I'm hoping that through this, I will create many, many chapters for my book. I want to leave you with a little story while I was sitting here prepping for this first podcast. I was hesitant. I was extremely anxious, and it was really hard for me to hit the record button. But I received a couple signs from my deceased mother. She's passed away, and I miss her dearly. And I'll definitely get into more about my mother in future podcasts. But I knew as I was sitting here today, there were a couple signs from her. The first was as I was looking out the window, making some notes, making sure everything was ready to go, I saw a red cardinal. And many people say that red cardinals are a sign of people that you loved in your life that have passed away. There I was, looking out the window, and there was a red cardinal. And I was like, oh, I wonder who that is. Who's here with me today? Unfortunately, I have a lot of deceased people in my family that I loved very dearly. So I didn't know who, but I knew that somebody was out there. And then I also had the radio on, and a song came on. And it's a song I haven't heard for years. And as the song started playing, I heard my mom singing it. It was one of her favorite songs. And she would sing it so loud, with so much passion. And she was so raw. But my mother did not have a singing voice. And that is one gift she's given to me. And the other gift she's given to me is, even though I have no singing voice, I get the words wrong, I have no tone, you sing loud, and you sing like you mean it. So there I was, sitting there, singing my mom's song. And I knew it right at that moment. That cardinal and that song was a sign from my mother. She was telling me, Bobbie Goldie, stop panicking, calm down, and just hit the record button. This is what you're supposed to do. So I did. And what I hope for you today is that you see your signs. I hope there's those moments that help you get through life. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to continue down the path to create my memoir with you. Have an excellent day. And lastly, I want to share one of my most favorite quotes with you. Be a better person than you were yesterday.
Thanks for listening to The Memoir. Let's work to remove the stigma of taboo topics. We only have on average 30,000 days on this earth, so let's make the best of our remaining days together. Get in touch with Bobbie Goldie at BOBBIEGOLDIE.com and share your story